Iowa Fireworks Farm is Iowa's largest fireworks store. 6,000 square feet of hand-picked fireworks, over 50 brands and 1,300 different products to choose from. But they're also family-owned and operated. Iowa Fireworks Farm is the one stop you need to make before July 4th. You'll find them just south of the Metro. Take I-35 to exit 43 at New Virginia. Head east and look for the Big Red Barn. At Iowa Fireworks Farm, the toughest part will be deciding what not to buy.
Eric Church Free the Machine Tour. Live at Wells Fargo Arena, Saturday, September 27th. One epic night of music that you won't want to miss with special guest Marcus King Band. Get tickets now at highbtix.com. His new album, Evangeline vs. the Machine, is out now. For more, visit ericchurch.com.
Here we are. It's bigger than 12. We are 1 week away from Big 12 Media Days. So close to the unofficial kickoff of football season. Officially, we're about 6 weeks away, and it can't come soon enough. I'm Jake Brend, co-host of Bigger Than 12, joined by my other co-host, Derek Duke. What is up, Derek?
Man, this week flew by. It felt like we just recorded yesterday, but it's been a busy week and weekend for both of us, really, I guess. So spent some time with some old high school buddies last night on Saturday, and had a few beers. And then this week I'm going to be out of town for the 4th of July. So yeah, busy week ahead for both of us.
This is going out on Tuesday. We are recording Sunday. I'm in Greensboro for a sports media convention. I was also at a wedding/bachelor trip for the last 3 days. So I have spent the night in my own bed once in the last week, pretty much, and it was for 4 hours.
A bachelor party before the wedding is a very bold move, I feel like, personally.
It is, but it made sense. So we had about 4 guys coming from Iowa. There's 4 guys coming from Tennessee. A few people coming from northern Wisconsin. So it just made more sense. So yeah, there we are. Those are all Iowa guys. So a few of us were in the wedding. Actually, all Simpson guys, I should say. My buddy Max in the bow tie got married. It was a lovely day. Was that
from the wedding?
Yeah, that was the night of the wedding.
Outside wedding.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we got lucky, man. It was 95 the entire week leading up, and it's been 95 every day since. And it was only 87 the day of the wedding. It was out. It was shaded. It was out in the woods. I didn't even know there was woods in Chicago. It was.
I don't know.
What I described it, this place that it was at, we were out the west, the complete west suburbs. When we got out of the car for the rehearsal, I said that if you would have dropped me just from a plane, dropped me straight there, and I had no idea what city or state I was in or country, I would have guessed that I was in Denmark. There's no way I could tell that I was in Chicago.
That's a little random. I'm
or
not
the Netherlands. Netherlands, okay. Sorry.
All right. I don't do
it. It reminded me
weddings.
of Midsummer. Have you ever seen Midsummer?
No. I don't even know what that is.
It's a terrifying movie.
Terrifying movie.
And I don't get scared. I don't get scared by movies, and that movie kind of freaks me out.
The last outside wedding I did was 4 or 5 years ago, and it was my wife's cousin. And my wife's in the wedding, and of course, I got to be there. So I'm dressed up in I'm wearing a long sleeve, I guess you would say, cowboy shirt, Ariat shirt on, and it was a light color. It was a light blue out. And it was July, and it was about pushing 99 to 100. Oh. And they got married at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was there for an hour outside, and by the time I went back in and I looked at myself, I thought I had peed my shirt. I was sweating so much. I had the pit stains rolling down my shirt. Of course, I didn't have another shirt to change in. So I kind of just had to roll with the flow there. And of course, wearing a lighter shirt, you can see the entire sweat going down my body. So have not done an outside wedding since. Don't plan on doing another one anytime soon.
Yeah, you run into the problem because if you want to do an outside wedding, it's got to be spring or fall, but in Iowa at least, or in the Midwest, you really run the risk of rain in the spring, yep. And that would make fall the ideal time for an outdoor wedding, except there's nothing worse than a fall wedding, especially on a Saturday. So it makes it difficult. It was a fun time though. I'm excited to be in North Carolina, and then I'll fly back from North Carolina and I'll be in Dallas next week. It's that time of year. It's pretty freaking awesome.
You'll be everywhere.
So I mentioned Dallas. We'll talk about that in a second. First, let's thank our friends at WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax. They make it happen here at Iowa, everywhere, supporting bigger than 12. They can simplify wealth for you. Tim Hawkins and his team excel in that. And what they would tell you is no matter what stage of life, no matter if you're 18 years old, if you're 60 years old, investing in your retirement will do so many wonders for you. Obviously, it's better the younger you are to start, but you can truly start at any time. Go to wealthcharterretirement.com and get a meeting set up with Tim Hawkins and his team. We're going to continue our season outlooks into Cincinnati and Colorado today. Of course, we'll have another draft. But while we're on the topic of Big 12 Media Days, it will be different this year. No preseason poll. I kind of think we're going to have different opinions on this. I want to hear your opinion first, Derek. As you can see, Brent McMurphy tweeted that it was Big 12 athletic director and coaches that decided to go away with the poll. They will still do preseason all league teams, which I think is the right move. But what are your thoughts on no preseason poll?
Yeah, I actually just before I hopped on the show, I just got done finishing up an article on this. As someone who has a vote on that poll, I'm actually not mad that they went away with it. In fact, I kind of get it. Last year's media poll, when we all picked Arizona State to finish last, and they ended up winning the Big 12, it really did make us all look stupid.
BYU 12th as well.
Yeah, and I kind of wrote about this too. It's like if you go back and you actually look at the top 5 standings from last year in the conference, 4 of those 5 teams weren't even picked to finish in the top 10. The only one who was picked to finish in the top 10 was Iowa State, of course. You can see they're at 6. So the Big 12 is the hardest conference to predict by far. We don't have like the Ohio States or the Alabamas or the Georgias of the world, or even like the ACC and Clemson. Like the gap between these teams that we've talked about before are very small compared to other conferences. And that's what makes it so tough to predict. I mean, we did win totals a few weeks ago. You look at the top, 8 teams? They're all like within 2 wins of each other, and no team.
The entire conference, it was from 5.5 to 8.5.
Yeah.
Nothing outside.
Team. Not a single team's picked to win even 9 games this year. So, but I think by making ourselves look foolish last year in the preseason poll, we probably actually hurt the perception of the conference to the rest of the college football world, because when Arizona State's sitting there winning game after game, and people are going, well, why is the bottom feeder of that conference beating up on the rest of the Big 12? When in reality, Arizona State, of course, as we know now, was the best team. So yeah, it definitely hurts, but I look at it like this. I've compared it to the AP poll. It's bad for the Big 12 because like the AP poll shoves a bunch of Big 10 SEC teams in the top 25, and like it or not, it does have an influence on what the College Football Playoff Committee has to think about, especially during the first weekend when they initially release the initial rankings. So I think it does have a negative effect on the Big 12 in some sense, unless it just goes according to plan, which it very rarely does.
I agree with you. My problem with it is that there should either be no media polls or no preseason polls altogether, or have all of them. And that's where I'm pro not having a preseason media poll, but I also don't think that the SEC should, the Big Ten. I don't think we should have an AP preseason poll either. I think the AP poll does more damage than anything, because you if you start Tennessee at the poll 7th to start the year, their 8-4 is going to look a lot different than a BYU, or not 8-4. If Tennessee goes 10-2 as the 7th ranked preseason team, opposed to BYU's 10-2 last year, where they were picked, they didn't have any votes, and that perception affects where they are in the polls all year long. And I know the committee of the college football playoff says that the AP poll doesn't influence their decision, but that's just not true. I don't think they intentionally let it affect their decision, but it's just human nature to, if you see number 7 by Tennessee all year, or if you see unranked by Iowa State or by Kansas all year, you're just naturally going to associate them with what you see. And I think we should get rid of all of them. With that being said, this is my first ever Big 12 Media Days, and I was really excited to fill out a poll, and I'm a little bummed that I don't get to do it. But I do think it's the right move.
That's what social media is for, though.
Yeah, I'm still going to share one.
We all post our preseason poll anyways on social media, so I don't think it's that different. I actually agree with I think the AP poll does more damage than anything compared to like the Big 12 preseason poll or the SEC preseason poll. I think the AP top 25 is the one that actually does the most damage, especially for a conference like the Big 12.
I think if in an ideal world, there wouldn't be an AP poll until like week 4.
I say just get rid of it altogether. I mean, the only one that matters is going to be the college football playoff, the playoff rankings. That's it. That's the only thing that matters. That's all we're going to go by. Like, there's no point in even having an AP poll once we start the college football playoff every week. Like, once we get those rankings, we don't even need the AP poll. So that, to me, it's just useless anyways. But, and again,
That's
you're just
fair.
you're getting a bunch of people that don't watch any of the games. They maybe watch the one team they cover, maybe another one when they get home after the game, and that's it. Like, they don't know what's going on with any of these teams.
Not me and you.
Well, we know the Big 12, but I can't sit here and say I'm watching every Big 10 game.
That's fair.
Do you really want to watch Purdue on a weekly basis, or do you? Or Rutgers? Do you want to watch some Rutgers football? No.
Can I go back to the Drew Brees era, or like the Rutgers in the Big East, like mid-2000s, James Gandolfini in the crowd?
Yeah.
I'll go back and watch that version of Rutgers. But no, you're completely right. It's so hard to avoid biases in the AP poll when a lot of it is just natural geographic bias. We're going to be biased towards the Big 12 because we want the Big 12 to succeed, and we're around it all the time. And the same thing is happening all over the country, so I'm with you. If we got rid of the AP poll, probably especially in football, I'd be in favor. And I still think it's important in basketball. I think just the weight of having a ranking by a team when they come to town, I think it's good for the sport. But we'll move on to our season outlooks. We'll start with the Cincinnati Bearcats, fresh off of a 5-7 season when they lost the last 6 games of the year. Woof. So we'll go over what they lost, what they bring back, all that stuff, what they bring in. So first off on offense, they lose their, I'm not going to say star running back, but their pretty dang good running back, Corey Kiner. They also lose their 3 top receivers in Xavier Henderson, Tony Johnson, and Majoy Mayed. They return their quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, who had a very up and down year with a lot of flashes of being a dang good quarterback and some not so great flashes. They also bring back their stud tight end, Joe Royer. They bring in, as I said, they lost 3 starting receivers. They bring in 3 receivers from the transfer portal that look like they're capable of starting. Jeff Caldwell from Lindenwood, 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns at the FCS level. Cyrus Allen didn't have a great year at Texas A&M in 2024, but just 2 years ago had almost 800 yards. And then Caleb Goody, over 400 yards as a freshman at Colorado State. Very explosive. They also bring in a couple of really highly touted offensive linemen to pair with their returning offensive line. On defense, this is where it gets interesting. They return the Godfather, Dante Corleone, one of the best defensive linemen in the entire sport, in their captain, linebacker Jake Golday. But they lost all 3 starting safeties to the NFL and both of their starting cornerbacks to the transfer portal. And then they bring in really a transfer at every level. They got a cornerback, Matthew McDoom, freaking sick name, a safety from Tennessee, and a couple defensive linemen coming in. So a lot of turnover for Scott Satterfield in a really make or break year for him and his program. I'm just going to start on the offense. I think their biggest question comes from what can we expect from Brendan Sorsby, and how easy will he make it on his new weapons? Sorry, I forgot to add, they brought in Wisconsin's starting running back as well. That is, I've got the name. That is Tawee Walker, 800 yards at Wisconsin last year. So pretty much every weapon that they've got is new. Is Sorsby good enough to accommodate them to the offense, or are they going to have a learning curve and dig themselves too deep of a hole? That's what I worry about when I look at Cincy's offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that he does come back. Anytime you return your starting quarterback, that's a good thing. But as you mentioned, he was a guy in the first half of the season who was playing a lot better than what I expected, but then ended up getting worse as the year went on, really making some costly mistakes. I can think of a handful of games that he either fumbled the football, threw a costly interception, or a pick six the other way. And he cost his team down the second half of the stretch when they were trying to make a bowl game. Joe Royer, great tight end too, quality tight end. They did bring in a lot of new faces in that receiver room, which I felt like they needed to. And I also say their offensive line's one that needs to get better as well. So this is a team, to me, when I look at their offense, like, it's going to change. But I also think they need to slow games down a bit, be balanced on offense, because I don't think you're going to want to rely on Sorsby week in and week out trying to win games with his arms, because I think he's going to need some help in the running game, which they haven't really had over the past couple of years in the Big 12. So I think the key for them is trying to be balanced offensively and keep that clock moving.
Yeah, and I think the other key is finding a run game without putting too much mileage on Sorsby, because he's a very dynamic runner. We saw it in Ames. He ran for over like 125 yards. Yeah. But when you've got a guy running that much, getting hit that often, it almost makes sense that he had a spiral towards the end of the season. That's a lot of mileage to put on your quarterback. They're really going to need this Walker from Wisconsin to step up. But yeah, I haven't been a fan of the Scott Satterfield hire since it happened. And I can look at the stats of these receivers, I can watch a bit of the film and say they look good, but I'm sure their former receivers also looked pretty good when they were coming into Cincinnati. So it's a matter of, is this a Satterfield thing, or is this truly like they actually brought in some weapons? And I guess we'll wait and see. The defensive side of the ball, I think this is a much simpler question. Is their pass rush, which is going to be one of the best in the conference, is that going to be enough to make up for what they lost in the defensive backfield? And are they going to be able to patch that together? And I think it's just a matter of, we'll wait and see if the Godfather is that level. Because if he is, we're looking at maybe a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I think when you bring back a lot of your front seven, that's great. And then, as you mentioned, with the healthy Corleone, he's one of the best in the Big 12 to do it in the trenches. But again, that secondary is going to be very concerning to me. And in this conference, you got to be well-rounded. And I don't know if Cincinnati's there defensively. I don't think they were a great defense last year. They were just kind of okay. So for me, this team, when I look at it overall, a lot of question marks, and I'm sure we're going to say that about a lot of these teams with so many new faces in the transfer portal. So a lot of question marks for Cincinnati defensively and really offensively for that matter. So for me, this team, I'm not a confident one in this team at all. Like, I don't know if Scott Satterfield's going to be around for very much longer. So I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. I don't think there's really anybody that I personally know out there that's just clamoring for this team that's going to be like, oh, they're going to win 10 games this year. They're going to win 8 games. They're not going to finish in the top 5 of the conference. So I think expectations this season are pretty mild, to say the least.
Yeah, if I want to put a silver lining on it, it is that you'd say 2 of your most important positions are pretty dead set. Like, I know we might have questions about Sorsby and how he responds to his rough end of the season last year, but he was still really dynamic, and you know he's your guy. And then on the other end, when you have Corleone, when you have a guy that you know can get to the quarterback, that does a lot for a defense. I mean, how much of Iowa State's dominant defense for 3 years was because of Will McDonald? And that's where, if Corleone can maybe take another step up, I could see it making it so much easier for the rest of their defense. But again, I think highly of him, but I don't think that highly of him to where I think Cincy's going to be some real threat. And who knows? They've got a pretty good home schedule. They've got a few good opponents that they'll welcome. But I don't see it maybe outside of maybe 1 week jumping up and knocking somebody off. So what's your level of, or what's your line between a success and a disappointment for them?
I think a success would be for them to win probably 8 games. Like, this is a program that should probably be aiming for that like every single year. But they've really yet to even come close to that in their first 2 years in the conference. So I don't see that happening. A disappointment to me would probably be the same thing they did last year, where they just don't make a bowl game. Like, if this team does not get to 6 wins this year, then Satterfield, to me, at the very least, should be fired. I mean, we've both made it very clear that we don't think that he is the right man for the job. I questioned the hire when they first got him on board. I wasn't a fan of it, and I think now we're starting to see the results of that. So I would lean towards Satterfield being fired this season than not.
I think so too. If you just handed me $50 over under half of a year, or I guess over under 1.5 years, I'm taking the under. I don't see him making it to 2026 unless, again, they've got Iowa State, Baylor, BYU at home. If they've got a good home field advantage. If they can put together 2 of those wins and maybe jump up to 7 or 8 wins, that'd be a successful season. They do start the year with Nebraska on Thursday night in week 1.
That's a loss.
I think it's neutral. It is neutral. Let me see where it is. That Thursday night, when like football's officially back, is magical. They're playing Nebraska at Arrowhead. Yeah, that's a loss. There's going to be so many Husker fans there.
Oh man, yeah. I don't like that matchup for Cincinnati.
No, that's a bad matchup. Especially when you've got all these new defensive backs and you're going against Raiola. Like, that's...
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, Raiola's going to play in Patrick Mahomes Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be miserable. Oh, that's going to be miserable to watch.
He's probably going to worship his locker or do something, take something.
I don't want to know what he's going to do to his locker.
Yeah, it's probably yeah.
AD's going to put that in unnecessary censorship, probably.
It's going to be creepy. It really is concerning how much that he tries to copy Patrick Mahomes, thinks he's Patrick Mahomes, gets the same haircut. I don't know. It is very creepy. So, yeah, you're right. I don't want to know what he's going to do to Patrick Mahomes' locker. That's true.
All right. I don't know how to transition from that, but we'll just do it anyways. Colorado, our next team up, fresh off of a 10-3 season where they tied for first place in the Big 12 in the regular season, but missed out on the conference championship game. Well, they lost a lot, and they bring in a lot. Pretty much everybody that you would recognize on that team is gone. Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, the headliners, of course, but LaJohntay Wester, Will Shepard, Jimmy Horn Jr., their top 3 other receivers besides Hunter, also gone. As long as Isaiah Augustave, their running back, who was not great, he's gone. Their returners on offense, Dion, for one, and then they bring in Marshall Falk to be the running back coach. They also bring in Caden Salter, the highly coveted quarterback from Liberty. He took a step back in 2024, but in 23, he had 2,900 passing yards, 1,100 rushing yards, 44 total touchdowns, and led Liberty to a New Year's Six Bowl. They also add 5-star true freshman quarterback and 2-time Gatorade Player of the Year finalist Juju Lewis. He skipped his senior year, reclassified. According to Dion and their offensive coordinator, both will play. I'm sure that's just showmanship to not tip their hand. I would expect it to be Salter at quarterback. But then as far as reloading on weapons, they are reloading. They bring in DeKalen Taylor, a running back from Incarnate Word, over 900 yards in 2024, 6 yards per carry. And then 3 receivers, Sincere Brown from Campbell, over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. Joseph Williams, almost 600 yards as a freshman at Tulsa. And Hakeem Williams, a little under 200 yards as a sophomore at Florida State. That's a lot. Pretty much an entirely new roster on all fronts. Same thing with the defense. They lose Hunter, of course, as well as Shiloh Sanders and Cameron Silman Craig, another safety. They return 3 starters, one of them being their top pass rusher in Arden Walker. I'm not going to read off all the transfers they bring in, but it's a lot of highly coveted guys, a lot of 4-star transfer portal talent coming into their defense to patch it up. So this is really hard to talk about because we have nothing to go off of. So my biggest question for Colorado is everything, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because they bring in so much talent. It's just a matter of how much does that gel, and I guess who is the quarterback. And we'll see that week 1.
Yeah, I'm the same. We have a lot of questions overall, but like with the quarterback, is it going to be Lewis or is it going to be Salter? We probably think it's going to be Salter just due to the experience factor. The wide receiver room looks completely different. And then my biggest concern with Colorado the past 2 years, just kind of looking at them before, even when they're in the Pac-12, was their offensive line. They just returned 1 starter. I think just overall, when you look at them offensively, you return
probably a good thing.
1 starter. I mean, you do return 1 starter up front. But I say this every year, like when you have to replace your offensive line, like every single year, like that's not a good thing. That's a group that needs time to gel and run as one. And when you have to have 4 or 5 new faces up front, like every single year, to me, that's a problem. And I think that's why Colorado has had the worst offensive line in the Big 12 last season. And even the year before that, I felt like they probably had the worst offensive line in the Pac-12. So it's really hard to rely upon like a new quarterback and new running backs to try to get their run game going when the guys up front in front of you who are blocking are really struggling, especially early on in the season when they're still trying to figure things out.
This is going to be the ultimate test. Like it's the ultimate barometer for how much can you build through the transfer portal. Year 1, it did not go great. It had the hot start, but you could clearly tell that the deficit in the trenches was way too much to overcome. They had a lot of injuries that they dealt with. And last year, it worked. But how much of that was a Heisman Trophy winner that played both sides? And how much of that was one of the best quarterbacks in the sport in Shedeur Sanders? We're going to see the answer to that question this year because they've got NFL talent scattered all over the board. I have no doubt, especially at the skill positions. But it is so hard to just rebuild your roster completely through the portal. The way to do it, like what Iowa State's done, what K-State's done, if you bring back a lot, but then you plug in the gaps. I know there's other ways to do it, or even like how Ohio State did it last year. They needed a quarterback, so they brought in Will Howard. They went and paid a running back, and then they plugged in some gaps in the pass rush. I'm not a believer in Colorado because I don't think it's a sustainable way to build a football program at all.
Yeah, well, they're going to keep doing it. As long as Dion's there, like that's going to be his MO. He's going to keep doing that year in, year out. And I don't know, maybe some years it's going to work, but you also see the other side of that. I mean, look at Florida State last year.
Oh,
2-10, transfers everywhere. We all thought they were going to be really good. I think weren't they in the preseason top 10?
Yep.
Preseason
Open the
top
year
10
in
team.
Ireland.
2-10. They went 2-10 last year. So anything can happen. You just don't know sometimes with these transfer portal guys. You really don't know. Until it's all in the field and the pieces are in place, you don't know how it's going to look.
So when we're this uncertain, can we even say what a success and a disappointment would be? I would set it around 8 wins, similar to Cincinnati, but 10 wins wouldn't shock me when you bring in Salter or you bring in the top quarterback in the class. But also 3 wins wouldn't shock me because both your quarterbacks could get injured due to a lack of any run game and any returning experience on the offensive line. Like seriously, any outcome would not shock me.
Yeah, I think winning 8 games probably would be a good sign for Dion in this program. Like, I think we all believe that Colorado is going to take a step back, and like naturally they should. When you lose a player like Sanders and Hunter, so I think if they come out and they win 8 games, I would say to me that's a sign of where this program's floor can be. I would say 6-6 probably wouldn't be I don't think anybody would be thrilled in Boulder. I think we're past the point of the Dion era where just making a bowl game isn't going to be a good year by Colorado standards. So I don't know. Maybe when he took over, I would say a bowl game would have been okay, but that's not where this program needs to be anymore. Going to his third year. So we'll see what happens.
Their stretch to start the Big 12 schedule is just brutal. At Houston, BYU at home, at TCU, Iowa State at home, at Utah. Then they get a little bit of a break with Arizona at home, at West Virginia, and then they close with Arizona State and Boulder, and at K-State. Like that's
brutal.
I think when I put it in that perspective, I honestly think 7 wins might even be considered a success because that is that might be the toughest Big 12 schedule that I've seen.
Wasn't going to be easy.
All right, well, that does it for the C's, Cincinnati and Colorado. We'll continue to do 2 of these a week until we get right around kickoff. I know who can't wait for kickoff. It's Freedom Tire. All those trips up to Ames, and they'll be ready to get your cars ready for that because I don't like to think about it. I like to think about football weather coming. I don't like to think about winter weather coming. But it'll be here eventually, and you don't want to have car problems during football season, especially if you're stuck in traffic in northern Ankeny trying to get into Ames for the Cyhawk game. Just go to Freedom Tire now. Get your oil change. Do your routine checkup. If you've got problems, fix it at Freedom Tire. They've got locations in Ames. They've also got locations all around Des Moines and Altoona, Des Moines, West Des Moines, and Urbandale. Thanks to Freedom Tire for supporting what we do here at Iowa Everywhere. We've got the Iowa trivia question. Hello, Aiden.
Sticking with our wonderful game that Derek might not ever win. Here it is.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God.
So once again, if you would like to spell it.
All right, this little, it looks like a pretty small town, so I'll say it goes Quasqueton. Ah, jeez. I don't even know where to start. There's 2 Q's in the same town here, which I don't think I've ever seen before in my entire life. I don't know. Quasqueton, I don't know. Quastockton, I don't know. I don't know.
You saying it is like throwing me off now. I think it's Quasqueton.
Quasqueton?
I think it's Quasqueton. Quasqueton.
I had never heard of this town before I Googled this.
I've heard it referred to as Quasky. I don't know if it's
that's the result that I got too.
I don't know if it's tune or ton though. Quasqueton. Quasqueton.
Quasqueton? Okay, I could see that one. I could see that now. Yeah,
that's a brutal one. I feel like most of the audience probably won't know that either.
Unless there's somebody from there listening.
If you're listening from Quaskey,
please let us know.
Please let us know. Thanks for listening.
We just butchered your town's name, or at least I did. Sorry.
That's a tough one. That
was worse than last week.
That's one that pops up, and if I'm on Friday Night Blitz, and it's like, and now OAB CIG beats Quayston.
You don't even know.
No, I was joking. I'm just saying that's like one of those town names that pops up on the teleprompter, and you have no clue.
So you just have to roll with it? You just butcher it on live TV?
Yeah. Oh, say it with confidence.
Say it with confidence, even if you're wrong. Okay,
even if you know that I do not know this, just, yep, I'm going to say it the way it is. All right, let's move on to this draft. Did you see the results this week?
They just put them out, right? Am I getting killed? I figured I was going to get... once you had Brock Purdy in there, I figured I was going to get smoked.
It's bad.
You picked Brock Purdy to save that draft.
I legitimately thought that Brock Purdy, I had him ranked 8th, and I got him with my last pick. I wasn't pandering.
It was a little bit of pandering. I felt like if I would have picked Brock Purdy, even at 1, I would have won that draft.
I don't know. You've tried this strategy before where you picked Hilton Coliseum. I still destroyed you in the draft.
Yeah, I don't know.
You've tried both one. I'm on like a,
I don't know,
6-game win streak. We're doing an interesting one today. We're doing Big 12 football champions since the championship game returned. So that's 8 years. We're just going to split 4 and 4. There's going to be a lot of OU. And it's just a matter of how do we rank these OU teams based off of whatever criteria we select. So Aiden, bring our coin in.
Once again, going with Sally Ride. Derek, call in the air.
Tails.
Uh-oh.
It is tails.
We'll never know. All right, I'm going to take the first pick this time. I've been deferring to you, and that strategy has not worked. So I'm going to take the first pick here. And I don't know about you, Jake. I think there's one team here that stands out above the rest.
I agree.
It's 2017 Oklahoma. That, to me, maybe one of the best Big 12 teams of all time. Maybe not the most complete team, just because their defense just was not that great. But when you look at what they had offensively, they had Baker, CeeDee Lamb, Mark Andrews. They had like 4 of their 5 offensive linemen that year were drafted. They were just completely loaded on offense. Like, that is one of the best offenses, the most maybe complete offense I've ever seen in the Big 12 since I've been covering it. Defensively, yeah, they were a little bit of a liability. But when you think about what they did to how good Georgia was in 2017, they were so close to beating Georgia in that Rose Bowl. I think that one went to overtime, didn't it? So
yep.
That was one of the best college football playoff games of all time, too. So very close to beating Georgia and playing for a national championship. To me, that's probably in this new modern era where the Big 12 championship game is returned. I think this is the best team that's come out of there.
Yeah, that's, I think, a pretty easy 1-1. I also think the second pick is obvious, and it's just the next year. Oklahoma team. Sub in Baker Mayfield for Kyler Murray. Another dominant offense. The only regular season game they lost was the absolute classic at the Red River Showdown. Same thing. You had Hollywood Brown, you had CeeDee Lamb. You didn't have much of a defense, but you had a historically good offense. I said it last week. Kyler Murray is the best player that I've ever seen in person with my own eyes when he played that game at Iowa State in September that year. They gave Alabama a run for their money in the college football playoff, but again, I believe that was the Tua Jalen Hurts back and forth year for Alabama. Yeah. And I think Bama got up big and Oklahoma made it look not as bad late, but still, I I think Oklahoma is that's the second best team. And then third, I had a really difficult time with this one. I'm going to go 2023 Texas. A team that I publicly said before the year would not win the Big 12 championship. I said I'd rather light my money on fire. And they flirted with losing that thing plenty of times that year, but their talent just prevailed. What they were able to do up front on both sides of the ball was maybe the best of the Big 12 era since the championship games came, and then they just totally choked in the college football playoff. Should have beat Washington, didn't, and that was their lasting impression on the Big 12. And that they were a dang good team, definitely not as good as those first two Oklahoma teams, and that's why they're the third pick.
I might reach you a little bit here, but I'm going to go with 2024 Arizona State. I think they were the shock of the year last season, maybe even in college football. We saw Sam Levitt get better as a first-year starting quarterback. Their defense, which I think was massively underrated and nobody was really talking about, was outstanding. And, of course, I can't forget about that man right there in the picture, Cam Scatabo, leading the way. I mean, he was just an unbelievable player. He willed his team week in, week out, had some key moments, not only just in the championship game, in the playoff game as well. And people forget Jordan Tyson did not play in that game, their best receiver by far, and they were still a play away from knocking off Texas in the playoffs. So I don't know. I felt like Arizona State maybe was the best Big 12 team in the last 5 years. So I think you can make a strong case for them. The other one, oh man, this is kind of where we start getting tricky here, but
yeah,
I think I'm going to go 2019 Oklahoma here. I don't feel great about this team out of the Oklahoma teams on this list. Maybe the worst one outside of probably, the other one I'm sure you are going to pick here soon, but I don't know. I have to give credit to Jalen Hurts. Jake, you picked him in our QB draft last week. He had a phenomenal year that season. I don't think people remember, but Oklahoma's defense was actually a little bit better than what it had been in 2018 and 2017. In that 2019 season, they did take a step forward. But, it wasn't as good as Baker. It wasn't as good as Kyler. So, CeeDee Lamb was still there, who was phenomenal. But unfortunately, that team ran into an absolute buzzsaw in that 2019 LSU team led by Joe Burrow, which the Tigers just completely slaughtered the Sooners in that one. But I'm going to go
nobody was beating
Oklahoma.
LSU that year.
No, nobody was.
And they probably do get docked a little bit just because that's the memory is them getting embarrassed in the college football playoff. But Clemson got embarrassed too in the national championship.
They did.
That LSU team, unbelievable. I will go 2020 Oklahoma with my next pick. It's not flashy. I don't want to pick the fourth Oklahoma team. But after a rough start, they still did turn around. This feels like 25 years ago, and I'm not 25 years old yet. But the COVID shortened season, they started the year 0-2 in Big 12 play.
They did.
So that Iowa State-Oklahoma game, it was in October. Aiden and I were there. We sat front row. It was the first game with fans back in the stands, and I think OU was 1-1 and Iowa State was 1-1 going into it, or 2-1. It was just a bizarre year, and after they started the year bad, they won out, and they beat Iowa State in the Big 12 championship, an Iowa State team that I think was better than them, and they were ready for the moment, and Iowa State was not in that game. And again, it's more the same. Great offense, not a fantastic defense, and that's why they are where they are. My next pick, I will go with the 2021 Baylor Bears. Not the flashiest of teams. For as many great Baylor quarterbacks there have been over the years, Gary Bohannon was not one of the ones that comes to mind, but he is still the quarterback that led them to a Big 12 championship and maybe the best championship game that's ever been played at Jerry World. beating Oklahoma State on the final play. Okie State was that close to doing it. Baylor was really good that year, and it looked like they were starting something new, like they were going to become something in the Big 12, and it just hasn't amounted to anything since then. And that's why they were relatively low on my list, but not as low as the team that you're going to pick with your final pick.
Yeah, I did have this team last. 2022 Kansas State.
They weren't even the best team in the conference that year.
No. When they played TCU that year, I had TCU winning. I thought TCU was a team on a mission. I didn't think TCU was going to lose that whole season. And this ended up being their only loss in the Big 12 was in this championship game. I mean, what a game it was. That game went to overtime. It was great. Deuce Vaughn there was absolutely incredible. He was he was fantastic. Will Howard was a damn good quarterback for them as well. So Kansas State was a very respectable team. I don't think they were necessarily the best Big 12 team that particular year. And then I also remember what they did. I think that was in the Sugar Bowl when they played Alabama that year. Did not go very well. But still, I felt like, honestly, I would have 2022 Kansas State maybe over 2020 Oklahoma. I actually had, I had them like 1-2 there at the bottom. So I think you could make an argument for either one of those, maybe being last, but I'm stuck with 22 Kansas State, which I'm not too mad at.
I've got to correct myself. I remember Blake Shapen. He was the quarterback in the Big 12 championship. Bohannon was the quarterback most of the year.
I want to say I remember Shapen actually like set a record for like most consecutive completions in the Big 12 championship game that year. He was phenomenal. I do remember that. I'm trying to think. That one was probably the best atmosphere because I've been to quite a few. I've been to every championship game outside of the COVID year, 2020, where I couldn't even get in. I think that 21 game was probably the best Big 12 championship game I've been to. And that play, probably to me at least, is the best play in Big 12 championship game history, at least in my opinion. That goal line stand.
Yeah, that was incredible. I remember exactly where I was watching that game. So, alternate universe, Oklahoma State wins that game. Where do they rank on this list?
Maybe second to last. I don't know. I don't know if I put them above 21 Baylor. They'd probably be maybe in the same spot, honestly.
That's what I was thinking. I think it's interchangeable.
I'm trying to think. That team, I believe, went on. They beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl, I believe, that year. They still ended up winning a big game at the end of that season. So, I mean, Oklahoma State was still a damn good team that year, too.
Where would 2020 Iowa State rank if they pulled off the final drive against OU? I think 2020 Iowa State would have beat Arizona State this year.
Probably been pretty close.
I would have them in that ballpark.
I'd probably have them at 4 or 5, I would say, out of the 8 champions, somewhere around there, midway.
It's fun to look at. We'll have to do this for basketball. Maybe not next week, but maybe the week after. I think that'd be a fun.
That was a little harder because you have the conference tournament, which
we'd have to choose either tournament champs. We'd have to do tournament champs because then we're just ranking the best Kansas teams of the last 15 years.
Well, we might be ranking a lot of Iowa State teams too.
I'm saying if we did regular season.
Yes. Well, even
if we did regular season,
If we did tournaments, we'd still have quite a few Iowa State teams to pick from too.
If we did tournaments, it'd be like 5 Kansas, 5 Iowa State, a couple Texas, a couple Houston. But it'd be better than regular season because regular season literally was like 12 straight years of Kansas.
We just have a whole Kansas draft.
That would be a fun draft. Just pick the best Kansas teams of the last, maybe the most hateable Kansas teams of the last decade. That's actually not a bad idea.
There's no shortage of those, I'm sure.
That is not a bad idea at all. Mental note. Aiden, write that down right now. All right, I think that's all for today. I'm going to go get situated here in North Carolina, check into my hotel, hopefully.
I'm going to grab a beer.
I might do the same later tonight. I'm excited. We'll be back probably after Big 12 Media Days, if I had to guess. And there will be no shortage of stuff to talk about. Thanks to WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax for supporting Bigger Than 12 in the Channel Seed Studios.